In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
If you're looking to grow your family, Shady Grove Fertility is the place more people turn and where more physicians refer their patients. From the first appointment to welcoming home baby, Shady Grove Fertility is here for you. Backed by science and powered by hope, plus a 100% refund on IVF. Shady Grove Fertility is dedicated to delivering exceptional family building care in Rockville, D.C., Fairfax, and beyond. Miracles made here.
Hello and welcome to a new podcast, The Paddock and The Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Hello and welcome to The Paddock and The Pavilion for episode 41. I hope you are all enjoying all the extra podcasts in March. And early next week, we look forward to the Cheltenham Festival with former champion hurdle winning jockey Richard Linley. In today's podcast, I spoke again to the show's international cricket expert, Roland Butcher, in Barbados, for his thoughts on the recent India versus England Test series. Keep sending in all those reviews about the podcast and your questions for the Ask Richard Pittman about the Grand National programme. I know you will all look forward to hearing Richard again on the Paddock and the Pavilion. So wherever you are in the world, let's have a question for Richard. Enjoy today's podcast. Welcome back to the Paddock and the Pavilion, Roland.
Stephen, always a great pleasure to speak with you.
How is it in Barbados? Have you had your jab yet?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, no. I haven't put myself down to have it at the moment. I'm allowing the others to go and get theirs. As you know, I think we've only had about 100,000 shots donated by India, of which the Prime Minister donated some to St. Vincent. I would think very soon, if not now, the ones here in Barbados, the first shot would have all been used up. So, I'll have to wait for several batches later to come. So there's been some horrendous lines. So there's no point in getting involved at this stage.
But it's quite safe out there, though.
Well, it's as safe as it ever has been. From the start of the pandemic till now, no real difference. Obviously, you've had some community spread, which they're dealing with, but I think generally, people go and do what they have to do. Businesses are all reopened and everything else. So life is going on.
Well, that's good news. I will mention my own jab because I should have had it last Tuesday. Well, I thought I'd booked it for last Tuesday, and I turned up at Wisbeach for my jab. And then when I arrived, and I arrived early, so then I went back to my car. And then when I then went back, I noticed my booking was for this Tuesday. So
all right.
I still haven't had it yet.
Okay, well you have.
Anyway, today we're going to discuss England's comprehensive 3-1 defeat in the Test series against India. On our last podcast, you said that India would edge the series. And I'd like to get your views on a few themes. Plus, we must talk about the revival in the Caribbean.
Yeah, sure, of course.
To start with, did you think England were in some ways better prepared for the Test series, come back from Sri Lanka, than India? Because we started really well in that first Test.
Yes, England had a good start in the first Test. Obviously, I think what helped in that first Test was that England batted first. And we were able to get a big score on the board. And, as you know, in any cricket game, it doesn't matter where you're playing. If you can get a big first inning score, it puts a lot of pressure on the team who bats second. So, England was able to do that in that first Test match and obviously go on to win. In terms of India, obviously, India had returned from Australia very much on a high, having won an unexpected series there in Australia. And a very good one too, thoroughly deserved. But, as I said, the innings, particularly by Joe Root in that first Test match, really offset the apple cart for India. And, after that, they were struggling. But obviously what happened since then, obviously you would expect a team who's one of the best teams in the world playing at home, you would expect that at some stage they will get their game together and bounce back.
Yeah, and in the first test, we also had that fantastic over by Jimmy Anderson when he got Shubman Gill and Rahane out in the same over.
Yes, I think Anderson, obviously, most of the time having the ball most by himself. And yes, he picked up those wickets. But, as I said, that innings really by Root, which was an outstanding knock, really put England in a poor position. And they never really relinquished that stranglehold from that point on and got the result that they thoroughly deserved. Whether it gave them a false sense of security is another matter.
Well, England won that first test by 227 runs, and one of the topics that sort of hit the headlines in the UK after that, particularly the second and third tests, were the pitches. In the second test, the match only lasted 3 days. The third test only lasting 2 days. What were your thoughts on the surfaces for those two matches?
Well, that's a very good question. I thought for a spectacle of Test cricket, I don't think the pitches were of the standard. If they were of the standard for Test cricket, you would ask that they're prepared each and every time. And that really would not be a good spectacle for the game. A Test match finishing in 2 and 3 days. And on the first day, actually seeing the ball pitching in certain areas and divots coming out of the pitch. So it cannot be deemed in any way satisfactory for Test cricket, because Test cricket really should be about an even contest between bat and ball and providing entertainment for the viewers, whether they're in stadia or at home, watching their televisions, etc. So it's an entertainment sport that we're in, and really I thought those two pitches were not conducive to top-class Test cricket. Obviously, in those two situations, you had some players who were able to flourish, but, that's the case with any pitch. Somebody will flourish. But the fact is that too often it wasn't about the skill of the player, but a lot of luck came into it. And Test cricket should not be about a lot of luck. It should be about high skill between bat and ball. Certainly those two pitches were, from my estimation, too favourable for the spin bowlers.
What do you think then is the ideal Test wicket?
Well, for me, the ideal Test wicket is one that, initially gives the fast bowlers some encouragement. 2, day 2 and 3 flattens out to be a nice batting track. And by day 4 and 5 is offering the spinners some turn. So it brings all aspects of the game into play. So both the fast bowlers, the batsmen, and the spin bowlers, get involved. Anything that is too one-sided, if it's too flat, where there's no encouragement for fast or slow bowlers, that is not a good pitch. It's good if you're a batsman, then you're very pleased. But it's not a good Test pitch. And at the same time, if the pitch also is too heavily tilted, either in the fast bowlers' favour or the spin bowlers' favour, again, that's not a Test pitch. So the ideal pitch really is something that provides opportunity for all facets of the game to flourish.
Well, in the second test, England lost by 317 runs. In the third test, by 10 wickets. But I'm sure you'll agree the two Indian spinners, Axar Patel and Ravichandran Ashwin, both bowled supremely well.
Yeah, absolutely. They're players who are used to playing in their own conditions, and if the conditions are helpful, they're both players who can exploit it. Obviously, Patel is relatively new, but you can still see what a fine bowler he is. Ashwin is an experienced player. He's been around a long time, and his value to Indian cricket. So if you put those two together in conditions that are favourable, and if they've got a score on the board, then really it makes it extremely difficult for the batsman. You can't say that the England batsmen showed themselves in glory in terms of their performances or their skill level, but you still have to observe that things were heavily tilted in favour of the spinners.
What did you think to the England spinners? Jack Leach got 18 wickets in the series. Moeen Ali, 8 wickets, but unfortunately then was scheduled to go home. What did you think to their performances, along with Dom Bess?
Well, I think the England spinners, as we know, are not as good as the Indian spinners. And we knew that before the series. This is not something that we only found out during the series. Ashwin has been a long campaigner, with a good history. And you saw what Patel is able to do. So really before a ball was bowled, certainly in my mind, I knew that the Indian spinners were better than the English spinners. I mean, Dom Bess is someone who's trying to find his way in the Test cricket, a very inconsistent performer. One day, reasonably good, another day, not so good. And Leach, not necessarily a match-winning left-arm spinner. He's a decent left-arm spinner who'll do a good job for the team. But I don't think he's a spinner that, a batsman would really lose too much sleep about. So, the England spinners were always going to be, not as good as the Indian spinners. But, and India obviously have some good players that spin. So, it was going to be a tough job for them, even in the conditions that help them.
And what also helps them, one of your former colleagues, Simon Hughes, said on Channel 4 television about the increase with DRS, almost making the stumps 30% bigger. How would you yourself have tackled playing against spinners of Patel and Ashwin in these conditions?
Well, in those conditions, which, as I said, were very helpful to them, I think one thing you would have to understand is that, if you stay in for any length of time, you're always going to be under constant pressure. I don't think there's going to be any relief. There's never going to be a situation where you feel that you're really in, because, if you saw the different pitches, one of the pitches, even though the spinners took all the wickets, over 90% of the wickets were straight balls. And, that was because of the uncertainty of the pitch. So you wouldn't have minded if the ball was just, if the ball was spinning every ball, then obviously, you can develop a technique to play against that spinning ball. But when a ball pitches in the same place and goes straight on, it then creates a lot of doubt in the batsman's mind whether to play or whether to leave. So the straight ball really accounted for so many batsmen on both sides. But really, in those conditions, you've either got to get well forward or you've got to get right back. I think you've also got to be, pretty good and confident in your use of the feet. Trying to get out to the pitch of the ball, try to get to it on the half volley or on the full. If you play a half and half from the crease, really, it's only a matter of time before you get something to bat pad or something like that. Conditions are not easy for batting, so you'd expect it to be hard. You also would need a degree of luck because, against quality spinners who's going to be attacking all the time, there's never going to be a stage where the fielding side will be on the defensive because, you will not be able to score quickly enough to put them on the defensive. So it's really a battle of attrition and, hope that you stay in as long as possible. And obviously the longer you stay in, then things become a little bit easier. But I don't think England really applied themselves that well. Most of them got out playing a lot of shots. That was their way of countering the spin. And it proved really to their detriment.
Yeah, we had opening stands after the first test, where we put on 63 for the first test in the first innings. We followed up with opening stands of 0, 0, 17, 2, 0, 10 and 10. So we were always struggling. And did you think the pressure batting sort of wore Joe Root down a bit by the end of the series?
Well, I think the pressure wore all of them down, not just Joe Root.
And the final major topic in this country was about selection and rotation. England seemed to, in the last third and fourth test, keep picking the wrong side, and the third test we picked 4 seamers, and in the fourth test we picked 2. What were your thoughts on the selection?
Yeah, obviously they read the conditions wrong. If you notice, India had their full array of spinners in all the games, and and as you said, that test match where Stokes had to open the bowling as a fast bowler, as a part-time bowler, which he is these days, created a lot of imbalance within the side. It was then really them relying on their 3 spinners in Leach, Bess and Root to do the work. And when really, Anderson showed that, certainly with his figures, that, a decent seam bowler could have done a good job. So I think they got that wrong when they played all of those spinners and not enough fast bowlers. I think India, and they should, obviously they know the conditions better. They read the conditions certainly much better than England and put out sides that were appropriate for each test match.
And we spoke before in the previous podcast about rotation. Are you still in favour of the need for rotation because of the environment we're in?
I have no difficulty with rotation, if people have had long runs. But I think in these 2 series, Sri Lanka and India, they were short series, so they're not long series. So I don't see why they had to be rotating so much. I would imagine that they should have tried to keep as strong a side as possible, because against India you can't chop and change. You have to get into a rhythm and keep playing. I would have liked to see Moeen Ali certainly played those last few games, because he would add something to the bowling, and obviously as a batsman and a left-handed batsman. So I think he would have made it more difficult for the Indian batsman, certainly than Bess.
Yeah, and I think in fairness to Moeen Ali, he was scheduled to come home, so that was the reason why he came home.
Yeah, that was understood. But as I said, I mean, this certain tour of India, I would have had to revise that schedule, because I think he was an important player.
And despite that, I mean, England lost 3-1, but in the fourth test on the penultimate day, India were 146 for 6, replying to England's apparently low score of 205, until Rishabh Pant and Washington Sundar added over 100 and then obviously won that match. What were your impressions of Rishabh Pant?
Well, I don't think anybody should be surprised by what he's done, because you would have seen it before. You've only got to cast your mind back to a few test matches before that in Australia. And you saw a couple of innings that he played there. So you saw the capabilities and the audacity of him as a player. Same thing with Sundar. I mean, Sundar showed in Australia that, he is no lower order batsman. You can see that he is a batsman of quality. So both of those players had shown signs that, they were good players. And they enhanced that during the series. Hence, they were able to put together that partnership that you spoke about. So I don't think England should have been surprised at all.
Now, how good are this Indian side? They're now in the World Test Championship final against New Zealand, which is going to be played at the Ageas Bowl. How good a side are they?
Well, they've been a top side for a while. There's no question about that. I quite fancy New Zealand to win that, actually. I think New Zealand cricket is going very much in the right direction. Right now, they've got good balance of, quality batsmen, and I think their bowling attack, particularly pace attack, is probably one of the best in the world right now. If they were playing in India, I would fancy India for sure. But the fact that they're playing in England and in English conditions, my money will be very much on New Zealand to win that Test Championship.
Well, I know it's a different format, but New Zealand did beat India in the World Cup semi-final over here in 2019 because of their seam attack.
Yeah, they've got a very good seam attack. There's no question about it. And players to come back. You've got people like Ferguson to come back into the side. And obviously the revelation really has been Jameson. His rise up the rankings as an all-rounder, as a very high-quality all-rounder. And, he would be a standout player, certainly in England, when the conditions will will suit him. So, I think New Zealand really, there have been a team for a long, long time that's punched very much above their weight. I think before people would have thought that, when they're punched above their weight, it wasn't expected. I think with New Zealand now, anything they produce is expected. Their cricket really has developed to a very high level, and in all forms of the game. And I think they're very much on the up. And I should really give India a good series.
And how do you think India will do in their 5 Test match series against England in the summer?
Well, it's a chance for England to reverse what is happening in India. The Indian pace attack is not bad, but I think England must back their pace attack against India's pace attack in their home conditions. I don't think the pitches can be anything but quite helpful to the seam bowlers, and you have to back your batters to play better in your conditions than the Indian batsmen. I think it's going to be a fascinating series. I'm looking forward to it. Again, I think it'll be close, and it's a series I think that, even though India won this last series, it's a series that I think England will just shave as well.
Well, thank you for your prediction there. Going back to one of your earlier predictions in the last podcast, we spoke about the West Indies, who were just at that time to travel, or actually were there in Bangladesh, and they had a very successful tour, winning both Test matches, with Kyle Myers making 210 on his debut. What can you tell us about Kyle Myers and about that series?
Well, first of all, Kyle Myers played exceptionally well in that second innings to pull off an improbable victory where, a West Indies team, even with all the stars chasing 400, is not an easy target. So to have reached nearly 400 and win with a side that was not expected to even compete, with a lot of new players, really was a performance beyond belief. I don't think anyone expected them to perform in that manner. And really, that one innings by Kyle Myers, 210 not out, took West Indies to a victory, which would have given them, a lot of confidence. Yeah, Kyle Myers is a good young player who in the last couple of years has developed. Well, I say young, I mean, he's probably 27, 28 now, so he's not that young. But, initially, he couldn't get into the Barbados side, so he was playing franchise cricket for the Winwoods. Obviously, getting experience. We brought him back home 2 seasons ago. He then had an outstanding Super 50 last year. Followed that up in the 4-day, in his first year playing 4-day cricket for Barbados, where he made several centuries, was one of the standout batsmen, and really got his opportunity to go on this tour, and really stood out in that Test match. I think he got 40 out in the first innings, looked very good, but that 210 in the second innings really was an outstanding performance. The question is whether he's able to replicate that in the future. I think he's set a very high standard now, so anything less than that, he may be judged fairly harshly, but which would be not the right thing to do. But I think a lot would be expected of him now, and we'd have to wait and see whether he could really live up to the reputation that he's built for himself.
Well, West Indies were chasing 395, and he became the 6th batsman to score a double century on his debut.
Yeah, that really is an outstanding feat, for someone who, under normal circumstances, probably would not have made a trip. But, he got the opportunity to play, and, that's what you want to see players do. You want to see them take those opportunities, and, he really has taken that opportunity along with the likes of Bonner and De Silva. I think those were 3 finds on that tour, and really should provide some stiff competition for West Indies selection.
Well, that's good news for cricket in the Caribbean, and you followed it up with the 2-1 series victory in the T20 series against Sri Lanka, where a certain Kieran Pollard got 6 sixes in an over in the first game.
Yeah, you would expect West Indies to win those ones. I mean, Sri Lanka has only just arrived in the region, so they're just adjusting to the conditions. Sri Lanka is not the team they were years ago. I mean, there's no Jayasuriya, there's no Sangakkara, no Jayawardene, no Arnold, Atipatu. Those are players of high quality. Muruletharan. They don't have those type of players in their side. So really, they've got some goodish players who, yet to really make their mark. So, as the series goes by, I would expect them to become a lot more competitive. But in the T20, I really didn't expect them to do as well as they did, in actual fact, in Sri Lanka. But West Indies just edged it, and they should have, because, if you look at the sides man for man in terms of T20 cricket, West Indies have got far more experience and successful T20 players than Sri Lanka. So you would expect that they should win. They made it difficult, and Sri Lanka was always in the games, and even right up to that last game. And as you said, Pollard was able to hit 6 sixes. There was also a hat-trick in that game as well. And the last game also, was fairly close. If it wasn't for a no ball that Jason Holder hit for 6, which then opened up the gate. Again, that could have been a very tight one. So, West Indies just got over the edge there. Yesterday, they got over the line in the 50th over, and quite easily. Again, Sri Lanka trying to adjust to conditions. This game was played now at Sir Vivian Richards Stadium, so that's the first time they played there. Excellent start, 100 without loss, and only made 230 odd. Not enough in those conditions. The West Indies was able to win quite easily. So I would expect the remaining matches that they will perform a lot better.
Yeah, you've got 2 more one-dayers as we're recording here on a Thursday, and 2 test matches as well.
Yeah, that's correct. 2 more games. West Indies will look to try and obviously close up the ODI series in the next game. But, Sri Lanka will be certainly trying to bounce back from this first defeat. I mean, they will know where they went wrong. The batting was not particularly good after that initial opening partnership. And then the run-outs was quite comical as well, which allowed them to lose the game. My concern really for Sri Lanka is in the fast bowling department. I think their fast bowling is quite ordinary. There definitely is a shortage of fast bowlers, and that may work against them in the rest of these 2 matches and the Test series.
Just returning to the T20, what did you think of the selections of Chris Gayle and Fidel Edwards for the T20 side?
Well, I think it's a case of really trying to see whether those guys still has what it takes. I think everything taking place throughout this year is going to be geared towards the World Cup. So they wanted to obviously take an early look to see whether, those are 2 players, if on top form, if they can contribute to the World Cup. Things didn't work out in that T20 series. Now, the interesting thing is going to be when the other teams come, because as you know, you've got Pakistan, Australia and South Africa due to come also this summer. And there's T20s in those series as well. So it'd be interesting to see whether they're chosen again for those series, to see whether they still have that ability to play. And then following those series, then, they'll have the World Cup. But I would think, Joe, this summer, they'll be looking at trying to get a settled team or a settled group of players in place for the World Cup. So whether Gayle and Edwards gets another opportunity, it might be a little bit harsh to have given them only 1 series to say whether they were good enough or not. It may be that the next series you have to give them an opportunity, and obviously if they fail, then you know which direction you're going.
Well, thank you for those thoughts on the Caribbean cricket. And just returning finally to England, what positives would you think England would take out of the series against India?
Well, I don't think there's a lot of positives really that England could take out, because apart from that first Test match, really, the performances, and you look at the scores, I would imagine after that they probably reached 200 once.
That's right.
So, they were very, very low scores. So from a batting point of view, not a great deal that you can be happy about. I would imagine in the last Test match, Dan Lawrence got two scores, so at least he held his hand up. He didn't get many opportunities before that to play, but the chance that he did get, at least he did something. So I guess, he's probably a positive. The only other positive really would be Joe Root, and you know that already, so that is not something new. And you would have liked you would have liked Ben Stokes to have regained his form, which he didn't. So not a lot of positives coming out of that series for England.
Well, on that subject, I was going to pose you a question. England are due to play Australia in the first test at Brisbane on December the 8th, 2021. And I just wanted to try and ask you to look in your crystal ball and give me the England 11 who will play in that test match. And no 12 or 13 or squads, or I just want your 11.
Well, I would imagine unless something happened drastically throughout this summer, I think you still got Burns and Sibley as, even though they failed in India, different conditions totally. So, those will come into the reckoning. Root, Crawley's there. I would say, Pope will be part of the setup. Obviously, Butler will be back. I'm looking at a squad.
You're checking out of the 11, you see.
Well, it's difficult. I mean, because in Australia, your pace attack's going to be important. So I would say, you're looking at. I think if Anderson is still in fitness, you'll have him. You'll have Broad, Archer, Walks, and that's what, 4 fast bowlers or 5.
You've got 4 at the moment. You've got Wokes, Archer, Broad, Anderson. And you've got Stokes. Right. I presume he'll play.
Stokes obviously would be another one. So you're fast bowling the spinners. I mean, I would say Moeen Ali would have an opportunity, as I don't think the Australians play off spin particularly well anyway. So, and you might need some of his lower order runs. Butler. So really, there's only room really in the team. There's only room in the team for, I think, one spinner. So there will be times where you don't play Elite Shore. Best is on that tour. You have to fill in overs with the likes of Joe Root and the off spinner in Moeen Ali, and then supplement it, with fast bowlers. Australia will do similarly. I mean, their team will be packed with fast bowlers. So I think England can start planning right now to have a battery of fast bowlers for that series.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you again for joining me on the Paddock and the Pavilion. Hopefully we can chat after England have played those 2 test matches against New Zealand, which I think begin on the 2nd of June, when hopefully we might even have some spectators at the game.
Well, that would be welcome, because it's been well over a year now that cricket fans who look forward to the summer and watching cricket haven't been able to get out and do their pastime. So it'd be a good thing if that can happen.
Right. Well, thank you very much,
Stephen. Always a pleasure, and I certainly look forward to seeing the summer of cricket.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Paddock and the Pavilion. You can download the show on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Spotify. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Pad and Pav.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
There's only one road into Key West, but you won't believe where it can take you. Travel back in time to a city rich with history. Discover amazing artists and musicians. Taste seafood fresh off the boat. Or just kick back and soak up the island vibe. For more about Key West, visit flakeys.com. Key West, close to perfect, far from normal.